And please welcome to the stage the general manager of your Columbus Blue Jackets, Jarmo Kekalainen. Now, for those of you that have the wrong opinion that, well, the Blue Jackets played their last game a couple of weeks ago and everybody's probably been on vacation and doing nothing, that's just me. That's not Jarmo. He's been a very busy guy, and it gets even more busy at this time of the year. Stanley Cup final game tonight. Maybe it's over tonight. Maybe they have to continue to play. But really, the minute that Stanley Cup final is over, the whole discussion changes in the league and starts to look toward the draft. And, of course, a lot of speculation throughout the league about, you know, if teams are going to move guys or not move guys and all of that. So do you get excited when you know that the focus is about to go back to, you know, the thing that you do best? I mean, you know, making deals, drafting players, signing players. Do you get excited at this time of the year?
Yeah, behind the scenes it's going on all the time. You don't obviously talk to the teams that are still playing. You let them take care of their business, but all the disappointed teams are talking already and getting ready for the draft. But at the same time, when Washington and Vegas are playing, their scouts and staff are getting ready for the draft, believe it or not, with all the excitement they have going on right now. It's probably hard, but it's coming up fast here on the 22nd.
And you talk about teams that are disappointed because they're out of it. That's 29 teams right now are just sitting and waiting to move on to the next phase. As these playoffs have gone on, well, let me just start with the series that your team played against the Washington Capitals. I know there was a lot of disappointment because you're up 2-0 and then all of a sudden Washington comes back. But I think one thing that we've seen in these playoffs from that team is I don't think anybody gave the Capitals, I know I didn't. I didn't give them the credit that they fully deserved with all the guys that they had lost after last year. They're a much better team than I think a lot of people gave them credit for, aren't they?
Yeah, they're a very good team, and that's why they're up 3-1 now in the Stanley Cup playoffs and in the finals, obviously. And I think they're going to win the Cup, but we'll see. They're still going to have to win the fourth game, and that just tells you how close we are, too. It was a great series. Obviously disappointing to go out in 6 games, but we're here, game 3, and all we need is that one goal in the overtime. We're up 3-0 in the series. That's why they keep the score. That we couldn't score that one more goal, and they did. And it's the margins are so small. Same thing in the game 5. We're tied in Washington. Put them in the ropes. Outshoot them 16-1 in the third period. Scoring chances were 10-0 for us. Can't score that one goal. And they did, and that's why they are where they are right now. And obviously they won 2 more series after that. So it's a long road, and it takes a lot of experience. It takes a lot of good players. It takes a lot of depth. But we're close. We're getting there. We're getting into the right direction. And this is valuable experience for our guys that are young and haven't been through it yet. Now they know a little bit more about how hard it is to win a series. And I'm sure our guys have been watching every series after we lost and thinking about Washington, how close we were to take a 3-0 lead or a 3-2 lead in the series, and then you still got to win that fourth. So a lot of ifs there. So even though we're close, we're far, but we are getting into the right direction, and I'm really excited about our team.
And when you talk about the steps that you have to take, this is, for the first time in the franchise history, this team made it to the playoffs in consecutive seasons. It is not an easy thing to do in the NHL. It's very easy to look at it and say, well, 16 teams out of 31 get in. It is really hard to be one of those 16 teams. This team did that. And, Jarmo, they really did it 2 different ways. I mean, last year they basically ran a 16-game winning streak that they were able to kind of, even when things went bad, they had those points in the bank, they were able to ride. This year, it was a lot different. They had a fight near the end, did wind up winning 10 in a row late in the season, but had to earn their spot. And as you look at this group, and especially the core that's going to be back again, how good do you feel about what they have learned over the course of the past 2 years? Because it doesn't just, well, with Vegas you can say, well, don't you just show up and you get to go to the Stanley Cup final? It doesn't work that way normally. I mean, there is a progression that has to take place, especially with young players.
Yeah, and 82 game regular season, it's a tough road to go, and we had some tough moments or stretches in the regular season. We really don't talk about injuries a lot because it sounds like an excuse. You don't want to give the excuse outside the locker room. You don't want to give it inside the locker room. Some people are hurt. and other players will have to step up and take the responsibility and the opportunity and carry that load. But we had 4 of our key guys injured from December to mid-January, end of January, and 2 of the center icemen, and that's tough. And we went through that period hovering around 500, put ourselves into a bit of a hole there where we had to climb out of there, and we did. And we won those 10 games in a row, and we earned our spot in the playoffs. You said it, it's tough to make the playoffs. You look at the two of the conference finalists, Tampa Bay and Winnipeg. They didn't make the playoffs a year ago, and they're great teams. So it is tough, but the players will learn again one more time that maybe we took a little bit for granted after having 108 points. Maybe we overachieved a little bit. We talked about that going into this year. Let's not assume anything. Let's not take anything for granted here. We need to earn the spot in the playoffs again, and nobody's going to take us lightly anymore. We're not a secret, or nobody's going to think that, okay, we're going to Columbus or playing against Columbus, that's going to be easy. Everybody's going to be coming after us after the season we had with 108 points, and I think guys answered the challenge and made the playoffs again, second year in a row, and now we just got to set our sights again, getting better in the off season and from inside with the individual growth of the players we have, and then possibly adding something in the off season again and becoming a better team that can win a playoff series, win 2 playoff series, and ultimately 4 playoff series, and playing at this time of year, and it'll be really exciting.
You mentioned injuries and not using them as an excuse, but there was one guy that was injured for much of the year, and he played through that injury, and that's Zach Werenski, second-year defenseman. There were times that he looked like the guy from last year, and then there were a lot of times he didn't look like the guy from last year. And with the injury that he had and the surgery that he's now had to correct the injury, you could see why it was a bit of a struggle for him. But thinking about having him healthy once again, thinking about having Seth Jones, who I think took a big step this past year, and I think he took a big step both on and off the ice. He had great numbers on the ice. I thought off the ice he really has matured into a leader on this team, and especially for a lot of the younger guys, they look to him and they're getting good guidance from Seth Jones. Being able to have those 2 guys as anchors back there and drive things right from the blue line, having them both healthy, how big of a deal is that for you going into another year?
It's going to be huge. Obviously, Zach played through a lot of pain. That's just simply put, where when they opened his shoulder up and finally saw what the injury was, there was a significant injury there, and he had to play through a lot of pain. The whole season, basically, he got it early on and just played through it, kept playing through it, played with a brace that he could hardly move with, and trying to shoot with that brace when your arm moves like this much, it's pretty hard. Battling for loose pucks in the corners affects everything, and he didn't ever complain or use it as an excuse. He just kept playing through it, and now he'll be healthy for next year. And the growth of those young guys as leaders, that's going to be a big deal for our team. I think there are a lot of other guys too that have that potential on our team, and those young guys have to take over. They have to take over the team and first lead by example, like Seth does, night in and night out, and then becoming those leaders in the locker room too, dragging everybody into the fight and making sure that things are done the right way every day. That's the true leadership. It always starts with with leading by example. But we're excited about those young guys and their potential. And like you said, Seth Jones got better this year. There's no reason why he shouldn't get better for next year and the year after and the year after that. He's just tapping into his potential. 24 years old, and Zach's even younger. And usually you say it takes at least 200 games as a defenseman to truly learn what National Hockey League's all about. Zach's not even there yet, and Seth's just passed that threshold. But those guys, the sky's the limit for those 2 guys.
When you talk about leadership, can you explain, like, this is stuff that we talk about a little bit during the regular season, but we don't really get much into because there's so much of the games that are going on. But the leadership thing, this sport it's so unique in the fact that you have superstars. There's no doubt there are superstars, but it's not like one guy can take over a team, although any Bobrovsky fan would argue with me on that one. I get it. But it's not like you have that one guy. You know, the NBA finals are going on, and, you know, one guy can make such a big difference in that sport. Here, it's got to be, you can have great talent, but it's got to work together, and there has to be cohesion. And, you know, isn't that why you stress the leadership aspect of it so much, because you have to have that structure?
Yeah, and I always say that hockey is a great team sport, and look at Vegas. That's the only way to explain their success, is that they truly bought into how to play as a team. Everybody bought in. There's no big egos there, and they're just 100% committed to playing the way they need to play to be successful as a team, and that's great about hockey. Yeah, the underdog, if they stick to the plan and have that 100% commitment, they can accomplish great things in hockey. And there's the hockey locker rooms are kind of unique in sports. I haven't spent a lot of time in basketball locker rooms or football or baseball, but I know that the number of guys on football teams a lot bigger. Basketball's a little bit different. I played soccer when I was young, but hockey becomes such a tight group during the year, and there's just the culture in hockey is such that there's just no room for big egos in the room. Otherwise, the kind of the room polices itself, where it is a great team sport and everybody has to play for the team. Otherwise, you're going to get the pressure from inside the room rather than from the management or the coaching staff. And that's the greatest pressure any player can have, is when the guy's staring at you in the locker room or giving it to you.
I said you have to have superstars, and you do have some superstars on your team. You were able to acquire one last year, just about this time of the year, right before the draft, and that was Artemi Panarin, who you got from the Chicago Blackhawks. And you know what? I give you all the credit in the world. First of all, I think you've made some really great deals for this organization, but I love the fact that two of the bigger deals that you made, they were both with Chicago. The Brandon Saad deal you made a couple of years ago, and then the Panarin deal. It's like, in this age of social media, when you can't even sneeze without the entire world knowing about it, you're able to pull off these big trades and catch everybody by surprise with it. So I give you a lot of credit for that, actually. But acquiring him last year, you know, there were so many questions, and they were outside questions. I'm not saying that you guys had questions, but can he be the player that he was in Chicago? Was he as good as he was because of Patrick Kane? Can he play without him? Can he be a superstar of his own on his own team? I think he answered every one of those questions for you last year, didn't he?
Yeah, he did, and then some. And the biggest thing about him, or maybe a bit of a surprise, although we felt that we had done our homework on his character very well, too, was that he's a great teammate, and he's a great pro. So he sets that example. He doesn't speak a lot. His English is getting better, but he's not the mouthiest guy in the locker room where he's talking all the time. You know, he's got a great sense of humor, but you kind of have to pull it out of him. But he sets the example and the standard every day, the way he works, and that's leadership at its best. As I said before, he doesn't have to say anything when he comes to the rink every day with a smile on his face, and works, has that 100% commitment, and then shows up for every game too, and produces results. We've been very fortunate to have him, and he's been a great addition to our group.
Another thing that turned out to be a total waste of time from the media was talking about how is Artemi Panarin going to work under the structure of John Tortorella, and how is he going to play when he's looking to fly the zone and not play defense, and he's looking for breakaways. And what we saw is just what you talked about. I think he was one of Torts' favorite players because of the work ethic. And, you know, when people, throughout the course of the year, when other broadcasters come up to you and maybe they're seeing you for the first time, how's Panarin playing? I would say the same thing. I would say, listen, this guy, when he's on the ice, he's probably always going to have the puck. And if he loses the puck, he's going to get it back again in just a few seconds. And that's what he did. And it's that hard work that really earned Torts' respect of him very early on. That was I laughed about that all year, because all those people that said, how's he going to operate? He's going to operate just fine.
Yeah, Torts, all he wants is guys that work and compete. And those two things are natural for Artemi. He comes to the rink and he works, he competes, and he does it every day consistently. It's the myth of John Tortorella more than it's the media image of him that creates these tensions that don't even exist. So it's pretty simple. You come to work, you do the work, you compete, and that's all he expects from you. And if you don't, you're going to hear about it. And that's the way I'd like it too. If I was a player, I'd much rather have the coach come right at me rather than hear it from behind my back that he's telling it to somebody else, so that I can hear him say it to somebody else, but he won't say it to my face. Torres will say it to the player's face every time.
Every time, you're right. 2 years ago, you went to the draft about this time of the year. You had the 3rd overall pick. And again, all those media pundits thought they knew exactly what you were going to do with it. And you surprised them, and you took Pierre-Luc Dubois with that 3rd overall pick. Now, the 2 guys that went in front of him played last year in the league, and they were both very good players while he played in junior. This year, he came in, a different guy, made the team out of training camp. And when his season was all done, he'd scored 20 goals in his first National Hockey League season. He turned into the top-line centerman on this team. As much as you knew about him and knew what his potential was there any point last year that you were still surprised by what he was able to accomplish at any point?
Well, I think with young guys like that, 19 years old, you're kind of surprised every night when he grabs onto more and more responsibility and takes on more and more challenges. You want to expect it, you want it to happen, but you can never really put a timetable on it. That's the same thing as when he came here the first year. We're thinking, well, physically he seems ready. He's a big guy. He's 210 pounds. He's 18 years old, but he just wasn't mentally ready yet to play with the big boys, and that's why he had to go back to junior. And that happens a lot. Happens with a lot of great players. It's happened to Hall of Famers, where they went back not only once but twice, and then played 20 years in the National Hockey League. And I know guys that started at 21 years of age or 22 years of age. Dan Muselan, a good friend of mine, played 22 years in the league, but started as a 22-year-old in the National Hockey League, and went into Hall of Fame last year. So everybody's at their own pace. They get physically mature in their own schedule. They get mentally mature in their own schedule. And Pierre-Luc was a different guy this year, as you said. And we had big expectations for him. That's obviously why we took him 3rd overall. And the pundits, as you mentioned, the guys that were the loudest criticizing us probably never saw him play. And that's the funny part of the social media experts.
Do you ever feel vindicated when that kind of stuff happens?
I don't really. I mean, it's background noise sort of thing, and it's. There's so many experts that if we started listening to everybody with all due respect, then that would be tough. I always say that there's 18,000 experts here every night when we have a full house that know the game better than I do, and they have every right to do that too. And you know, it's the privilege you get when you become a fan of the Blue Jackets. That hopefully you're passionate about it and want to live every moment of the wins and losses with us. And I got a thick skin by now. I've been in the hockey management for 23 years.
And you've been in that in different roles. After you were done playing, you get into scouting, and I know you were one of those guys that was driving in a car in the middle of absolutely nowhere through a snowstorm just to see one extra guy play. At this time of the year, with the draft coming up in a couple of weeks, you know, how has your role changed now? I mean, you're the head man. Now you're the guy listening to the scouts. You're the one taking all of those opinions as you get together as a group and make your own list and decide. And you have the 18th overall pick this year. So, you know, it's not like when you had the number 3. And the number 3, you pretty much know who's going to be there. At 18, maybe you have a good idea, maybe you have no idea. So as you get together with your scouts now and you're having those discussions, and maybe a discussion turns into a friendly argument, turns into whatever, how much fun is that for you in this role?
It's a lot of fun, but I had the privilege of working for general managers who let me do my job when I was running the draft. So that's the one lesson that I've learned from those guys, that I'm going to let the scouts do the work, put their list together, and then I'm going to take it and I'm going to follow it to the T and not mess their job with opinions I may have after seeing the guys a couple times or on video. they see those guys, they see 200, 250 games a year, and I see a fraction of it on the amateur side. I have to see so many NHL games to make sure that I know the league. I just don't have enough time to watch the amateur prospects. There's so many of them. And at the end of the day, that's their job. It's their baby, and it's their show. But we have great scouts in place, and I trust them 100%, and I will let them do their job.
So do you get, you've met with them once, right? You brought them in and had a meeting with
them?
them
Yeah, we have midterm meetings, obviously, and conference calls and so forth. Those guys are around the world all the time. Most of the guys stay in their areas, and we have about 20 scouts around the world on amateur and pro side. And then we have the crossover guys with Ville Siren and Chris Morehouse mainly, who cross over and see the top guys in each area. Ville Siren's our director of amateur scouting, and Chris Morehouse is his assistant director of amateur scouting. And those guys have a hard job. They have to rely on the area scouts that the areas are in the right order, and they go see the top guys in each area, but just the top guys, because otherwise you're going to spread yourself too wide. If you're trying to see 200, 300 top players, you have to concentrate sort of on top 30, top 50, make sure you see them enough so the top of the draft is in the right order through maybe rounds 3 to 5, and then you let the area scouts take some sleepers from their area in the late rounds, like we did with Markus Nutivara. Joseph Boumedienne, our scout in Finland and Sweden, did a great job and was pushing for this guy, and take him in the 7th round, and he's become a full-time NHL player, and those are real valuable picks for the organization.
When you're putting that together in that list, is it, once you have a team that, like this one, where it's going to the playoffs and you need to keep going to the playoffs, are you taking best available player, or are you drafting by position, or is it a combination of all of that?
That's always the philosophy, is that we're going to take the best player available. If there's a tie, we could maybe lean towards a need or position, or player type perhaps, but always stick to the principle of taking the best player available. It doesn't make any sense for us to think that, okay, we're going to need a forward now, let's take a forward, even if we think that a defense was much better prospect, because that need could change, and by the time they get ready to play in the National Hockey League, our needs could be completely different, especially in this day and age with the salary cap and how quickly things can change.
Is it a little bit easier this year not having that expansion draft like you had last year, where Vegas was, you're trying to wheel and deal and make sure you keep certain guys and, protect guys and do trades just for that draft itself, plus the regular entry draft is a little bit more normal, I guess I could say, this year?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it was unfortunate last year. If we had the expansion draft the year before, we wouldn't have lost anybody that was part of our core or part of our future. And last year when the draft was, and it was unfortunate that we had 3-4 guys that we did not want to lose, but we had to lose one good player, and that's when you pay $500 million to the NHL teams for the expansion fee. I guess you deserve a good team, and they got a good team, and they've done a great job with their team too, and that's where they are now. And now we can just concentrate on the draft. There's a lot of talk, obviously, going in there. I've been when I worked for Ottawa, we had a 21st pick in the draft. The morning of the draft, we had 2nd overall and 21st pick overall. So things can change quickly too, and our scouts are going to be ready, and those tough decisions, whether we're at 3rd overall like we were with Pierre-Luc Dubois, and our head scout Ville Siren, and Chris Morehouse did most of the work with him, where they were certain with all the pressure that was on them to how's our list. Those guys stuck to their guns and said, this is the guy we need to take, no matter what the experts are saying. And we got a great player there. So they're ready wherever we're picking, whether we pick 18th or 10th or 3rd or 10th and 18th. They're going to be ready with their list, and that's what we're going to follow.
So maybe you could potentially pull off another blockbuster on us this summer?
We'll see. We've got some time here to work on some things, but I mean, we have a good core. We have a good young team, and we're going to let those guys grow, and we're going to add pieces that we feel that fits that team and the team concept and the future, both in the short run and in the long run, and will make our team better and stronger But you know, we're going to have some great growth from inside as well.
And for you guys, after the draft is over, like immediately after the draft, development camp will open here in the Ice House, which those practices are open. You can get to come and see not only guys that are drafted in this year's draft, but even more importantly, some guys that have been taken in the last few years and guys that are going to come here this summer. And they're going to be invited back in September, maybe with an opportunity, like Pierre-Luc Dubois last year, to make the team. So once you get through that step of the draft, you know, how happy are you to get those guys in here and see where they are from where they were a year ago, especially when you had a lot of guys that played in Europe this past year too. So I know you go over there and you had a chance to see them a little bit, but do you like to bring them in here and get to see them all at once?
Yeah, although I don't look at the development camp as really an opportunity to evaluate the players. It's in the middle of the summer. They're in their off-season training mode. But it's more of an educational process that we want them to go through to learn what it takes to play in the National Hockey League in different areas, whether it's dealing with social media or nutrition or rest, sleep patterns, training, opening a bank account, all those things. And there, like you said, there are European players that don't know the culture, don't know how things work here. So even the simplest things that are easy for people that live here can be a bit of a change from what they're used to. So there's a lot of different things that we put together for them. We try to make an interesting program for them every year, change it a bit, whether it's you know, from sports psychologists to high performance topics, to trying to hit a baseball in Cleveland Indians batting practice last year, you know. So we're making it interesting for them, fun, and also a great learning experience.
You know, it's funny, you talk about, you know, guys that don't understand the culture. I've seen guys in the minors that come across at 18 years old. All of a sudden, they're in an apartment. They don't know how to do laundry. They don't know how to do a lot of stuff. Somebody will go in and see a whole bunch of fast food wrappers all over the place, and then you're wondering why the guy's sluggish on the ice. Yeah, right?
We have a cooking class for them and what groceries to buy, and when you go to the grocery store, read the labels and buy healthy food and all that stuff. And that can be a challenge too, especially for the guys that don't know the language very well. Yeah.
Like if I had to go to Finland to do it, I would probably be in big trouble.
You'd be in trouble.
Right? No question. Speaking of questions, we'll take a couple for Jarmo. So if you have a question, you know what? That podium is over there, but that light's in the way. So if you have a question, raise your hand. I'll come to you and you can ask the question, and we'll do it that way. So I'll do a couple. So who has one? Nobody. Seriously?
Or if you have a loud voice, you can just...
If you have, here's one. Or if you have a loud voice, you can just yell it out. No, we'll get it. So I'll sit down. I'll come to you. Here you go. Say your name and then ask your question.
All right, my name is Michael Williams. This goes back to Zach's injury. Are you anticipating any trouble based on what you've seen from him in the past of breaking him of all the bad habits he's developed while wearing the brace?
Oh, I think he'll be fine. When he's healthy, he's gonna approach the game a whole different way. It's when you're playing through pain, it's almost natural to be a little bit cautious of getting hit, and your strength in the battle is not going to be the same. But once he gets back to 100%, it's going to be a different game for him. It'll be a lot easier, and everything will come a lot more naturally to him again. Starting from his shot, that's probably one of his biggest assets, and as we saw in the first year in particular here, that he has a great shot, one of the best from the blue line in the whole National Hockey League, and I think that'll be back to normal again next year.
Jarmo, Ben has a question for you here. What is it, Ben?
I just like to be a hockey player.
You want to be a hockey player? Do you play any hockey right now? Not yet?
Just street hockey.
Just street hockey. Jarmo, what advice do you have for young Ben to become a hockey player?
It's a great start from the street hockey. That's the way to start it. How old are you, Ben?
How old? Say it.
4.
4. You're getting started right at the right age. Get the skates on next year, and there you go.
You want to be a forward? Do you want to be a defenseman? Do you want to be a goalie? What do you think? You want to score goals? You want to stop goals?
Score
You know, you should get those skates right now and start walking with them on the. Don't go on the hardwood floor, but go on the carpet and start walking with them. That's a good start.
You take lessons now?
Rollerblades, maybe, in the basement, and then.
Thank you, Ben.
Then you're gonna be ready for the ice when the.
Dad's got this on video someday. You're going to
Next
draft
season
Ben, and we're
starts.
going to say, look at this footage that we got from this back in 2018. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name's Jim Rzakowski, and back at the start of the NHL, there were 6 teams, and it depended on how well you spoke Canadian as to how well the coaches were able to get across their players. Now that you draft players from all over the world, how many interpreters do you need for the coach to deal with the players? I mean, how can he go up and yell at a player who might be Russian or Czech or whatever, and he only speaks English, or maybe French also, but how do they communicate with the players?
Well, I don't think we have anybody on our team that doesn't understand English. I'd say
I thought you were going to say that,
very,
that
very
doesn't
close
understand when Torts
very
is mad at
close
him.
to- Yeah, that could be another challenge, but Artemi Panarin is getting better, as I mentioned. He doesn't do a lot of media interviews because he's probably a little bit too self-conscious. He actually speaks fine, but it's just not comfortable doing it yet in front of the cameras. But he understands pretty much everything you say. Sergei Bobrovsky speaks good English and understands everything. Our Finnish players speak good English. Our Swedish players, Alexander Wenberg, you can hardly hear an accent anymore. Swedish is so close to English that it's a lot easier for the Swedes to learn. So I don't see that as a big problem. And 20 years ago or 30 years ago, when the foreign players started coming over here, and Russians in particular at that time did not speak very much English when they came over here. Finns were the same way. Some of them hardly spoke any. But nowadays, with the way that the TV and the social media and the material on the internet, it's so much easier for them to learn. They have so much more access to the language to learn it that I think it's become a lot easier.
And don't forget, players are like your children. They all have selective hearing anyway, okay?
Artemi said he learned English from watching the show Friends on TV.
Yes, sir.
Great place to learn that. Jarmo, first of all, I want to thank you because since you've become general manager here, I was a casual fan of hockey in general, and now I'm not only a hockey fan, but a Columbus Blue Jackets fan. And the amount of young talent that we've been able to draft and develop is amazing. And I want to thank you for being the most responsible for that.
Thank you.
When it comes to what Torts had said after the season ended, he said that we need to learn how to win. And with the amount of young talent that we have, other than Foligno and the great pickup of Ian Cole, what is your thought process towards veteran leadership, specifically someone who has been there and done that would help us obtain that goal of learning how to win?
Well, I think that we have some good veterans that have been through a lot, but also, Seth Jones was mentioned here earlier, and he's been in the league now enough that he should be considered a veteran even at his young age, and they're gaining that valuable experience. This year they're going to gain again 82 games in the regular season. Next year, if there's a veteran that we can add that adds that leadership to our team like we did at the deadline, we're going to do it if it fits the plan that we have for our group. Ian Cole was a great example that you mentioned there, that he fit in well. He was a leader. He's won 2 cups with Pittsburgh, and he stepped into his role here very comfortably and took a leadership role right away, and that's very valuable. We're going to look for that type of leadership if we can add it from the outside, but it has to again fit our short-term and long-term plans. But I truly believe that we have some great young leaders in the making, and And by going through some disappointments like we did this year and the year before, they're going to learn, and they're going to learn how hard it is to win, how hard it is to win a series, let alone win 4 series to win the Stanley Cup. But, you know, look at Washington, how many disappointments did they have to go through to get where they are now, and everybody had labeled them that they can't win and they can't, but they grew through that disappointment, and now they're close. They're 1 win away from being Stanley Cup champions. And I remember throughout the years many leaders that were considered the guys that, oh, you'll never win with him. Even the great Steve Yzerman, when he was early in his years in Detroit, people would say that, well, I'm not sure if Steve Yzerman is going to be a leader or if he's going to be the guy that's going to lead you to Stanley Cups. And then all of a sudden, boom, and then it was just, and then now he's considered one of the greatest leaders ever, deservingly so. But you need to learn to win, and once you learn to win, you will never want to let that taste go away, and you're going to become coming back hungry the year after and the year after for many years, hopefully, with our core, if we learn to do that at the right age. And I think we're, as I said, we're getting closer and closer to that, and once we get that proper taste of it, we're going to be there for a while.
All right, we've got one more question, then I'm going to give away some prizes here to you for coming out tonight. So, yes, sir.
2 years ago, a lot of people laid the blame at Bob's feet. This past year, 2-game lead, we lose this series. Where's the mental aspect of the team right now based on your talk with the players, Torts? Where are they at mentally going into this last season, having, 2 years now? First year, some people laid it at Bob's feet. This last year, we kind of fell flat. So where are we mentally going into this year?
Well, I think we've learned again, and those are hard lessons. They're disappointing, and there's a lot of heartache, obviously, and the season or the off season is long for us to think about. It's too long when you think about it. It's a little bit bitter. We were so close to being able to put them right into the ropes, and they are a great team, Washington, and we were able to have them in such a great place for us to just deliver that one more knockout punch, but we couldn't. So it's a bitter summer for us. It's a long summer for us to think about it, but I think we'll be stronger again next year because of that experience. And as hard of a lesson it is, they are very valuable, and most of the teams that you look at some of the greatest championship teams and organizations that won championships years in a row, like Edmonton had that dynasty, and Islanders, if you go back where they won 4 in a row, how many times they had to be disappointed before they got that first win, and once they learned to win, then that taste of it took over, and you don't have to look very far when you look at Pittsburgh and where they were at 15 years ago. They were in the bottom of the league, and then they got first overall picks and got lucky 2005 where it was a full lottery for the whole league, and a guy by the name of Sidney Crosby happened to be drafted that year, and then they went and won the cup and won 2 more after that, but it took them a long time to even with that great core that they had with Sidney Crosby being the first overall pick, Yevgeny Malkin being the first and second overall pick. Marc-Andre Fleury was a first overall pick. That means that you're in the bottom of the league 3 years out of those picks, and those are hard years. But most of the teams that have won championships have been to the bottom. The only teams that I can think of that didn't have to go through that heartache are LA and Boston that didn't go right to the bottom. Chicago won 3 cups, and they picked Patrick Kane first overall, Jonathan Taves third overall. That means they were right in the bottom of the league before they got where they got and winning Stanley Cups. Hopefully we don't have to visit there anymore, and we can grow, and our young core is going to get the taste of that success, and then never going to let it go again. And like I said, I think once we get there, I think we're going to be there for a while, and that's the goal as an organization, is that we get to the level of that sustained success where every year we're one of those teams that everybody thinks that they have a really good chance to win the Stanley Cup.